Welcome, everybody who's listening to this progressive yoga therapy conversation. I'm here with Montserrat Gomez Mukherjee and myself, Yasmin Bedi. And in this episode, this conversation, we're just going to be talking a little bit about our backgrounds that have led us to this point in our yoga therapy journey. Obviously, Montserrat has been doing yoga therapy for decades, so has so much to share with us. Um, so perhaps you would like to begin by telling us a little bit about your background and how you found yourself even being aware of yoga in the first instance.
Yes, of course, of course. So, well, apart from having lived several lives in this
Which
life,
we can maybe talk about.
in this lifetime, so not previous life, the way you would think of that, but actually in this life. So, yeah, how did I start with yoga? Well, I worked in the corporate world in London, and I'm Spanish. Yes, I was born in Madrid in a very in the outskirts of Madrid, from a very humble, actually below the poverty line
Mm.
background family. My family, they were all from the south, from Andalusia. And I was born in Madrid, I think, by chance. And then, well, a family of intellectuals, kind of, yeah, mathematicians and writers and teachers, a lot of teachers. So
Yeah.
my grandfather was a teacher here at school. My
Oh,
mother was a teacher. My father had a teacher. Sorry, my mother was a teacher. Sorry, my mother was a teacher as well, and my brother is a teacher, and
wow. So much education.
he has a school. He has a school as well. My brother, and also a very very big school in Spain. And so yeah, definitely everybody was into the teaching and into the sea. So they were all in the Navy as well. So yeah, and warriors and teachers, if you want to call them, maybe, I don't know, or seafarers and teachers. And yeah, I left Spain at a very early age because triggered by poverty. So I had to really leave and find a better way of living. I was only
Mm.
17. And then I had a one-way ticket for the UK.
Wow.
I wanted to learn English. I never spoke English before, of course, and the United States was too far and
Yeah.
unaffordable. So there was England was the way. And I remember that ticket that I took one way without speaking a word of English. It was like the
That's
funniest
so
thing.
brave
Oh, it was crazy. It
and
was insane.
exciting.
And I think I had money for just to survive for a few days. And
Oh.
there was no way. So I knew that I had to do something.
Mm.
So when I arrived, it was incredible because, of course, you think that you know a language because you've done a little short course or whatever. But actually, when I arrived, I didn't understand anything. And I was in Islington. So North London, so I was a bit like, what is this? Right? I couldn't understand a word. But yeah, I mean, I worked, which is a little bit of a funny story because I worked as what you would call a classic au pair,
Oh.
except that I was taking care of a dog and three cats.
Oh, wow. An
Only in England.
envelope pair.
Only in England. Only in England. And I consider myself so lucky because all my friends, they were looking after babies and children.
You
I
had the
didn't
better
want
job.
ever. I wanted, I had a puppy, a beautiful white Alsatian, and
Oh.
three cats, and I was in heaven. I was not there heaven. And it was in an area of London, of England, Surrey. I was in Surrey. So, wow, I was introduced. Imagine I was coming from below the poverty line, and then I go to Surrey in England, near Weybridge, Esher and Weybridge. And I was like, whoa, what is this? So I was very lucky because the couple who I lived with, and they took care of me, they couldn't have children. So they took me on as their own daughter.
Oh.
And they sponsored me and they paid for my studies. So that's how I managed to do, of course, all my studies in English in Isha College. And everything was like they literally they took me on. They realized I came from a very poor family, so I was extremely extremely lucky. And then, well, a little bit like going from there, I stayed in England and I never went back to Spain, not long term anyway. And the usual story, find an English boyfriend, all of this. And then I ended up by, I guess, the works of fate, working in the fashion industry.
Mm.
And it was quite interesting because since a little girl, my whole life, Yasmin, when I know that nowadays they call it manifesting, but I've always seen what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Always. So when I was a little girl, I always saw myself speaking English, and I would pretend to sing English songs.
Oh.
Like, like pretending.
Yeah.
And I told people that I could speak English. And because I'm blonde with green eyes in Spain, everybody thought that I was a foreigner, not a Spanish girl. And I was like, yeah, I'm English. You know, I would go like this. And so I ended up in England and speaking English. So that was a big box for me to tick. And then when I was a little girl, also, I used to draw fashion shows. And I had this vision, God knows where I saw fashion shows, but I would do collections, yeah, and I would draw them.
Oh, wow.
That was a little girl. And then, well, I ended up actually sitting in the front row of fashion shows around the world because I ended up with Browns in London as a buyer.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time that there was these collections that we had to go and buy them in New York, and I was just only a young girl. And I saw the collection, and I said to, at the time, the owner of Browns in London, in Bond Street, who was Mrs. Burstein, I worked all night on a spread out of these dolls. Again, I did the same dolls that I did when I was a little girl.
Oh, wow.
And I did all the collection in with all the different colors.
Yeah.
And then I presented it to her. Could you imagine? I mean, on a board meeting in London. And I presented these drawings with these figures. And I said to her, Mrs. Burstein, I think I can buy this collection. And then in the middle of the meeting, she said, Montserrat is going to New York. And I was inside going, so I was in my early 20s. So it was an incredible opportunity for me.
Wow.
And yeah, from then on, it took off. I just went to New York. I would literally sit in the front row because Browns at the time was like an icon of fashion, the store. I met incredible people. I've met, well, I always say I've met, of course, they would never remember me, but I helped with the wardrobe and, buying collections for
supermodels.
Diana Ross, the Beatles. Well, I've met the Beatles. I met Ringo Starr. I've met,
Goodness.
I know, super exciting. Gary Oldman. I mean, I don't know. There was a whole Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman when they were together.
Yeah.
Madonna, the Oasis boys. There were like a whole lot of kind of like, and I was part at the time of what was called Cool Britannia. Which is like, it was in the 90s and Britain was becoming, it was with the Oasis and the Verb. There was a big music movement at the time, and also fashion with Alexander McQueen, with John Galliano, blah, blah, blah. And then I was in the middle of that.
Wow.
Yeah, Stella McCartney.
What a place to be.
Yes, and Time magazine listed me as one of the top 100 most influential people in the world of fashion. So, I bet you didn't expect that one.
No, I did not. That's amazing.
I still have the cuttings because of course,
you still have
before internet. So yes, so I was I was number 67. I was above Tommy Hilfiger. So can you imagine?
No way.
Oh, yes, girl. And yeah, absolutely. So I was very influential, but behind the scenes, always, like a mover and shaker. And then I got an invitation from Tony Blair, number 10, for being part, I know. Yes, for being part of Cool Britannia. And I went there for dinner, and I have some photo out there somewhere with Shirley Blair, with, the two of us completely, with a glass of champagne. Okay. We are fabulous people. But it's very interesting because at the time, of course, it was a very exciting job, and I would go around the world, look at collections, choose the best, kind of like, I had incredible training. But at the time, I always worked with younger people and new designers. So for example, John Galliano, Alexander McQueen. Alexander McQueen, I remember he brought me a leather jacket. I think it was color red or something like that. And he came to me with this jacket, and I looked at it, and I said, this is incredible quality. This is an incredible jacket. So yes, let me see if we can host your collection here and we can sell your collection here. So I always felt that I was helping young talent, young people to move forward in the world of fashion. John Galliano was also one of them. We put one of his dresses in the window, and he worked as a Sunday, as a Saturday boy in the shop. And the people that worked with me also. So I had an assistant. I was so young, and I had an assistant. Crazy. So, and then I would always like encourage her. So I was also a teacher in a way. I was always kind of
a
like
mentor
a
as
mentor.
younger.
Always. I mean, younger. Like I said, I was young, but
Yeah.
younger than me. I felt quite grown up at the time because I was spending so much money on people's collections and all kinds of things. At the same time, I've always been a very sports person, so I played water polo of all the sports in the world. I had always been a swimmer, and I had done handball in my younger years, and so handball and swimming combined is water polo. So at the University of Westminster were playing in Carnaby Street, the swimming pool in London. I saw them training, and I went in there and I said, I want to do this.
Let's make it happen.
I just went, really? I said, I want to do this. How can I do this? And he said, okay, next time you come with a swimming costume, and then come and join to train with us. And I was not with the University of Westminster, but I trained and I played with them.
Gosh.
With a fake ID, should I say that? Because I was not with Westminster University, but I've been quite good at the game. I loved it. Those were the best years of my life. I was traveling, then training, and we finished training at 11 o'clock at night. So a very, very intense life, physically very intense as well. And then I was at a party at Momo's in Regent Street, the Stella McCartney's party, and I had just flown from somewhere, and I started to feel unwell. And I was, I think I was just completely exhausted, burning the candle from both sides. And I was not feeling well, so I had to rest, and and I was like, I don't know that. And then somebody who worked with me, Barbara Kramer, she was a friend from New York. She was there, and she said to me, honey, she's from New York, she was from Brooklyn, and she goes, your chi is too low. And I went, my what? And she said, my chi, your chi is too low, your energy is too low, you run out, you need to do yoga. This is what she said to me. And Stella McCartney, I don't know if you know, but her mother was really into yoga. Paula McCartney was one of the first women in the scene of international scene of, let's just say, maybe we call them white women, but regardless of that, but she was really promoting yoga.
I didn't know that.
Yes, she did pass away from breast cancer, but she was one of the first ones to do plant-based, vegan. Yeah, she had
we used to buy her sausages. I still do.
Correct. And yoga was a big thing as well. Stella McCartney also. So so I thought, okay, well, the next morning I ended up in the Life Centre of Notting Hill in a yoga class. And it was full of people. And I'll never forget it. She was a young Indian teacher. And I can remember her face to this day. I'm very good at remembering faces. No names, but faces I'm good. And then I decided I'm going to do my own thing, because obviously I'm not as flexible as these people imagine. I was playing water polo, so flexibility zero.
Yeah.
I was like, right, okay, 3 times the size that I'm now. So I thought, I cannot do it. So I started to do my own adaptation. And then this teacher came next to me. I'll never forget it. And she went, we don't do yoga like that. What she said to me. So I remember going, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I was like a bit.
Made you feel.
But then here comes another manifestation in my life. So as I was there sitting in that class, I thought to myself, I can teach this, and I will teach it in a more tolerant way. This is what I thought. This is what I thought. Okay.
Your very first class.
That every time I'm going to do this. And then, so this is what I thought. That my very first class, I thought, I can teach this, and I can teach it, in a more friendly, tolerant way.
Yeah.
So then what I did, because that made me really afraid of yoga classes after that. So I bought myself a book, which if I showed it to you, you'd laugh your head off. I still have it. It is beautiful photographs. Again, this beautiful lady from India, dressed in these long leotards in neon colors,
Wow.
like leotards, like all shiny, completely adjusted, and in yellow, in bright neon green. And I would go in my bathroom at home. My husband, who, by the way, is from Indian origins, that's why my name is Mukherjee. So at the time, yeah, married in England, so I took on his name, and I would be upstairs, and our bathroom was quite big for some reason. You know, it was an old bathroom, but it was big. And in front of the mirror, I would be doing my first yoga poses, and I would fall doing tree pose. I remember and then trying again and trying again. And then, yeah, but I was combining it with still my training of water polo. So that I don't know how compatible that was. I was just doing it. So that was really the first time that I started to go into yoga. Absolutely no spiritual aspect to it, and no relaxation, absolutely no breathing. There was no breathing involved. But the classic, let's just call them asanas, did do something to me, that they calmed me down. It was nothing to do with the fast pace of the sports that I played before and my fast paced life that I had. And it was something that I could do by myself in this bathroom. I'll never forget it. I had wooden floors and it was creaky, and it was my moment. It was my moment.
Yeah.
And that's really how I started. And then basically what happened is just that I got pregnant, and yes. And so that is when I decided, okay, I want to do some pregnancy training. So I trained also at the Life Center in Notting Hill at the time as a yoga teacher, but not with the intention to teach, but to learn about the pregnancy. And then I moved to Amsterdam for circumstances. My husband moved, and I was looking to get away from the fashion world. I was already going in that direction, like I said, but I was using yoga for myself. And after giving birth, I started also with, I started to explore a little bit like massage and Kundalini yoga. I was introduced to Kundalini yoga, which got me so fit after the pregnancy. I mean, I think my daughter was maybe like 6 months, and I had a six-pack from Kundalini.
Wow.
Insane. I came from a training background from high sports.
Yeah.
So,
you approached it with the same.
Completely. And so I was doing the Kundalini, and almost immediately I found yoga therapy. And why? And this was extraordinary. I was again overdoing it. I was a young mom, I was breastfeeding, I was doing Kundalini, I was teaching Sunday classes. My students called them church, going to Sunday church. And I had probably about 25 students, something like that. That was a very popular class. And I was really overdoing it. And one day, I have no idea why. I look back and I think maybe it was a virus, maybe it was something. I couldn't move anymore. I know, it was extraordinary. Like literally, I couldn't move.
Wow.
So I was like in a complete muscle spasm from top to toe. I had no idea what it was. And to this day, I don't know what it was. And before that happened, in one of my classes, I had already had an insight. I share this often, which I was teaching this high power class. And then at the back of the room, there was a girl who was struggling. She was clearly struggling. And I realized, I thought, oh my God, she was very pale as well. So I was suffering with her. I was thinking, oh my God, this is not for you. So by the end of the class, I said to her, hey, are you okay? And then she said, oh, my friend recommended to come to you because it's such a good class. But I'm sick and they don't know why I'm sick. And I'm really feeling very, very tired. And you could see it. So I said to her, look, I really don't think that you should be doing this class. Go back to the doctors, try to find out what it is, and then come back by all means when you're feeling better. So that gave me a very small reason to think, that I was like, wait a minute. And from then on, I started to notice how my group classes, they were not suitable for that one. They were not good for this one. This one, I started to get concerned about my students, which before I never I never really did. I was just like, yeah, come on, like motivating them, demonstrating, and that was it. And I started to get concerned about them. And again, they started to ask me questions. Should I be doing this? It was like, what? What is it? And then this happened to me, that I couldn't move. And I went into complete spasm. And I wonder why. And now looking back, I think it could have been something a little bit psychological, because we were meant to move to Hong Kong for a new job, my husband's job at the time. And I've always been I left home when I was 17. So I've always been the owner of my own destiny, if you want to say it. So I don't like this idea of I move somewhere and be somebody's wife following. Yeah. And I didn't want to move to Hong Kong. I had worked in Hong Kong in fashion as well, because fashion was quite high there as well. And I didn't want to. So I think that something held me back, Yasmin. And it was my body holding me back, literally. And I had a very funny friend. She's from California, which is South Korean. And people would say, what's wrong with you? And she would say, Hong Kong. And she was right. I just couldn't move to Hong Kong. So my body stopped me. So I stopped and I closed my class. I never taught that class anymore at the weekend. And I went away for 3 months to the sun in Spain, going back to my roots and going back just like swimming in the sea. And all I could do, Yasmin, was this. So I was doing almost like my own joint freeing movement without knowing that it was joint freeing.
You would know, yeah.
This is all I could do. I mean, this is like, I was physically one of the strongest women you've ever seen.
Yeah, super active your whole life.
And I could not move. So when I go back to the Netherlands, I started to look for something else. I thought there's got to be another way. Yeah, I cannot sustain this physical yoga. I was only 32, but I thought, I cannot sustain this. It's not possible.
Yeah.
And I don't want to teach this, because this is going to hurt people as well as hurting myself. So it was very early days in internet, at least in my life. And I remember we had this mushroom that was like a modem and it was huge, and internet took forever. But I started looking and I found the Yoga Biomedical Trust in London. And of course, I lived in London for so many years. I thought, oh, this is it. This is for me. When I read about it, I immediately, Yasmin,
You knew.
I knew. And I thought, okay, I've got to go here. So the following 2 years were a little bit crazy again, because I had to travel to London back and forth. I had a young baby, so either she'd come with me, or my mother or my mother-in-law would come and take care of her, or back and forth. It was very challenging. We were 50 students in the class.
Wow.
Which only 17 graduated at the end of it.
Oh, how long was the course?
It was a massacre. 2.5 years, something like that. And yeah, it was the teachings were spectacular, because Dr. Robin Monroe, who unfortunately recently passed away, and Dr. Ruth Gilmore, so doctors who were doing yoga.
Yeah.
It was a pioneer course. It was like very rare. And they had other fantastic teachers, Anna Blackmore, and also Lisa Cayley Isley as well. Was that Uma Dinsmore Tooley? She was there also as a student, as a teacher. Her husband was a teacher near Lipta. She just had a baby, so she was breastfeeding also. Well, it's funny because there's only 2 days difference in our birthday.
Oh, really? Oh.
And I think at least our babies must be now the same similar age. And I had yoga nidra for the first time. Whoa, what is this? And the learnings were so different, Yasmin. I was really worried, because I thought, oh my God, I'm not like these people. There were a lot of Ashtangis, by the way. And you would come into the class and somebody would be doing, a headstand or a handstand, or, as you went to say hi. And there was me with my muscle issues and my, and I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to perform. Wow, I didn't know that everything was taught in such simple manner, very slow, some philosophy, but a lot of medical studies, a lot
Mm.
of medical knowledge. And we had to, at the time, have also some practical experience in working at a doctor's office or with a doctor or a
Oh,
hospital
that's
somewhere. So
amazing.
I volunteered with Dr. Robin Monroe at his NHS. Well, he had a clinic connected with the NHS for people with back pain.
Yeah.
So I volunteered on that, and we did fantastic work, and he did fantastic work, and I learned. And I had a knife for backs and for
Mm.
bodies. So to see, okay, this is the area where there could be the hernia. This is the area that has an spasm. This is the asymmetric, and maybe because I had a knife of fashion.
Yeah, people's posture and the way
Could
they
be.
hold
I have
themselves.
no idea, but I can. It's always been one of my favorite areas to work in. um, to see this architecture of the body. Yes, some people always say to me, "How did you see that?" I don't know, but I see that one shoulder is higher than the other. I can see how they're standing. I can see, right. So yeah, and then so much hard work. And Yasmin, I'm saying this because a lot of people who do or want to become yoga therapists, they think that they can do it quick and easy.
Mm.
And it is hard. It should be hard work.
Yeah.
It really should be. You really need to learn. I mean, I remember studying for hours and hours and hours and learning every single muscle of the body and uh, right. And we had no Google. So,
Yeah,
right.
the library with textbooks and
Text. Oh my God. I know that some of our students, they go, oh, you didn't upload the materials. And oh my God. We used to turn up. You were lucky if you got some photocopies of a part of a book.
wow. It was
Lucky if you got a photocopy of something. Okay.
yeah,
You had to immediately, like whatever the teacher was saying, you better be quick writing it
yeah.
because that was it. There was no replay. And the teacher they would finish teaching and then they would go home. So there was no kind of like saying, oh, I didn't understand. No, get it or leave it. And then maybe the
Yeah.
day after you might be lucky. So you had to be really quick. Your mind had to be really kind of like on it, and it physically and mentally was an effort.
And do you think that might have contributed to so few people graduating from your course, just the quickness and that volume?
Correct. I really think so. You had to be with all your senses there, and also there were a lot of people who reacted against it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we had a lot of people, like I said, from Ashtanga, maybe hardcore backgrounds. And when they started to do yoga therapy, they were thinking they had different expectations. I think they thought that yoga therapy would be using these advanced yoga practices that they had learned
Yeah.
to do therapy.
Mm.
And it's like, no, no, no. Those advanced yoga asanas and even breathing practices, you had to, you know,
Rein them back in.
bring them back in and take a lot of layers off. And then we started to bring case studies, or sometimes you have to learn with somebody. I remember I worked with this taxi driver called John. He was a cab driver. And John, he couldn't move. I'll never forget him. He had a big belly, and he was like, and I just got him to do half downward dog against the wall, barely. And I remember someone walked out of the room because it was all so slow. We were going so slow. I know nowadays you wouldn't think about that, but
Yeah.
it was all so slow and so gentle.
Yeah.
And then, I was like, okay, take a moment to breathe. And I remember this woman just like, went, just walked out. Like, this is not yoga. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was really fascinating. The exams were really hard. Oh my God, I still have them. Yeah, it was really hardcore. But who would have said to me that one day that course became the basis of our training in the Yoga Therapy Institute? So at the time, I had no intention of doing that, of course, but I started almost straight away to work as a yoga therapist. And that was, about, maybe 20 years ago, a little bit longer. And I started straight away. I just thought, okay, this is it for me. And I started with my neighbor. I'll never forget it. I mean, for €5. And then my neighbor brought her husband with back pain, and then the other one brought another one, and then the other one brought another one. Yes, Yasmin. Yes. And I always say to people when they say, oh, your Instagram. And I said, to this day, I don't have my own Instagram account. I have it for the school. And I don't have my website, but still I work as a therapist because I work from recommendation.
Yeah. You don't need to advertise because you've worked with so many people, and
if you work with somebody and they feel better, their pain improves, they recover, they can sleep, they will tell somebody.
Mm-hmm.
The next time they speak to a friend, they say, you need to go to Montserrat. And Yasmin, I always say that to the students, people are not going to come to you maybe because of yoga therapy. They're going to come to you because of you. And if your training is yoga therapy, yes, then you're doing it with the tools of yoga therapy. But so many clients of mine didn't know that I was a yoga therapist. They call me their yoga teacher. Or the other day, oh my God, I have this client. I've worked with her now for weeks, and she says, I can't make the appointment for Pilates. And I'm like, this is not Pilates. I'm like, this is not Pilates, woman. But I didn't tell her though. She thinks she's doing Pilates. She's doing therapy for the menopause. I'm like, okay. So yeah, it's the training, it's the love that you put in it, knowledge, constant learning, and dedication. And I think that maybe one of the problems we have, not with everybody, that of course we just want to, I want to learn this really quickly. I have a 200-hour. How quickly can I become a yoga therapist? It's a long training. And the biggest, I always say I have a PhD in this field because I've worked with hundreds of people in my little room. There's a beautiful room overlooking a canal in Amsterdam. You can just imagine it. And it's all white. And people come in. I was literally there like, okay, who's next? Boom, they would come in. I would get them a cup of tea, get my yoga therapy session, do normally an hour and 90 minutes. And I developed my own system in a way from what I learned to the Yoga Biomedical Trust from what my clients were bringing me. Their stories. I learned about human stories that people will come in and they will be, oh my God, trauma was not even mentioned at the time, but you started to hear the incredible stories of trauma, disease, illness, and how it affected them, their family. I started to develop my own intake based on what I had learned originally in my training, but then from life experience.
Yeah.
I need to ask a question about, have you ever been exposed to a traumatic event? Now, that is something I was never trained.
I was going to say, was because 20, 30 years ago, trauma was not something we talked about.
You know what the question was? Have you ever suffered abuse? That was the question that was there. Okay.
Wow.
So, but 20 years ago, that's the question you asked.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever suffered abuse? So then I started to realize, this is a tricky question. And, have you ever been exposed to abuse? Have you ever been exposed? So the language started to change until eventually it became, have you ever experienced or witnessed or been exposed to a traumatic experience? So that's the phrase that we use now.
Yeah.
But I started to change it. I started to change everything and adapt it to working with human beings. And I'm talking about at some point I was working with 7 people a day, 7 days a week.
Wow, that's intense.
Back to back. I separated from my husband. I kind of became a little bit like a single mom because I was the main carer of my daughter for circumstances, nothing to do with my husband. He's lovely, but for whatever circumstances it was for his work. So then I had my mother who came over and helped me. And it was so wonderful because I'd be working in the studio at the beginning. It was in an attic. And then I would come downstairs and there was my mom with my daughter. My mother had cooked a Spanish meal. So I have very fond memories of that. But oh my God, the work.
Yeah.
The work. I have books and books and books of writing all these cases and the connections that you could make. And Yasmin, there was, for example, one incredible connection that I made, which was for years, I've started to connect the dots between trauma and in some cases, experience of abuse, autoimmune disease, and chronic pain and joint hypermobility. And I kept on thinking, I am seeing these cases with hypermobility in women mainly, and I see traumatic events and hypermobility, and I see chronic pain and hypermobility, and I'm seeing autoimmune disease and hypermobility. And I recently saw a study, I think it was just recently, already in 2025, just been published, which connects trauma, an experience of trauma, chronic pain, and hypermobility of the joints.
Interesting.
And I remember I shared it and I said, finally, I had been seeing that. But of course, as a yoga therapist, that I said, well, I'm seeing a lot like this. So of course, it's not an empirical research kind of like anything that you could publish in a paper, but that I have already been writing, and I was already teaching it to people and saying, I'm just saying from my experience, this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing hypermobility of the joints and the experience of trauma.
The power of observation and linking those stories and really seeing people as humans and listening to what they have to say, which in so many areas of their life they're not listened to.
Of course. So so it's been unbelievable. Like mental health illnesses that nowadays you would say, it will be beyond the scope. I also learned about the scope of practice the hard way, like saying by having people with psychosis and experiencing them in my place, and I started to also make the connections between, of course, clinical depression and antidepressants. In those circumstances, some meditative practices in yoga nidra may be contraindicated because I've had reactions, of people. And so that's when I started to, and all of this, I always wrote it down, and I wrote it, and I made my own kind of clinical studies and blah, 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 blah. And then one day, Yasmin, I was teaching, and two events happened, which were very crucial to what the continuation of this, which was, one of them was that there was a yoga therapy conference that happened in Amsterdam. And you can imagine when I discovered this, I was like, what? A yoga therapy conference in Amsterdam? I thought, you mean there are other yoga therapists out there? I was like, really, as long as I was concerned, only 17 of us graduated.
Yeah, and there was
a medical trust. And as far as I was concerned, there was nothing else in the world, except maybe me and another 16 people out there.
Yeah. You were the pioneer until
I was the lone ranger of the yoga therapy. I was like, what? There's other people? So I was like so excited. So I went to this yoga therapy conference of 400 people that were there in a church, blah, 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 organized by someone from the Netherlands who had very cleverly caught up, realized yoga therapy is the next big thing. She's a very clever lady. And then she organized it. And I went to this talk, and I was like, I don't think anybody here. I mean, the talk was not really about yoga therapy. It was about research on yoga and medical thing, but it wasn't about yoga therapy. So I started to get a little bit, why is this called yoga therapy? So I stood up when they said, do you have any questions? And of course, I stood up and I went, and then I said, I just want to ask, who is here at yoga therapy in front of 400 people? I said, please raise your hand, all of those of you who are qualified as yoga therapists. Not one.
Wow.
Not one. Not even the speakers. So then I went,
so what was the aim of?
It was marketing, because this person who organized it knew that yoga therapy
was the next. Yeah.
So it was all promoted, like the first yoga therapy conference in Europe and blah, blah, blah. So it was very clever. So I have to be thankful for that, because then I said, okay, I'm a qualified yoga therapist. I, qualified with yoga, and I gave a speech, blah, 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 blah. And then at the end of it, I had a queue of people coming. I said, I want to know more. I want to know more about this. So as a result of that, there was one yoga teacher who came one day to me, contacted me and said, Montserrat, I learned about you from the conference. Could I come and observe your work? Nobody had ever asked me that. And I said, well, my work is very private with my clients, so I have to ask my clients. And so I did. And there were a few that said, no problem. This girl was really, really lovely and very respectful. So she sat in a corner while I was doing my yoga therapy. And then we would go for walks afterwards. And then one day she said to me, Montserrat, you have to share this with other yoga teachers. You have to train people to do this.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? And she was like, yeah, you have to. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe. And the final push was a client, Caroline Timson, who I finished my session with her, and lovely lady as well, and she almost became a friend. She put her arms around me and she said, you have to share this. And then when, between these yoga teachers telling that, and then this client telling me this, I thought, this is it. And that is how I said, let's do it. And just like everything on this earth, I guess that I've done is like, once I decide, then, I go full on. So everybody around me better hang on, because I feel sorry for the people around me. My personal relationships have never been so successful, I think, because once I get into a project,
full force.
Either you jump with me and I'm going off on my own. So yes, and what was fascinating was that I had exactly the program in my mind. It was based on the Yoga Biomedical Trust. I went back to my files, because I keep everything. Went back to my files when I studied, and I decided to divide the program in the body systems. It was a little bit different to how the Yoga Biomedical Trust had done it, but I thought, okay, cardiovascular, nervous system. And now I've seen so many programs and so many, even recently I saw a book which was Yoga Therapy for the Body, and it's divided in it's like the model.
So when you were setting up the Yoga Therapy Institute training, you only had the one course there was nothing else out there at all.
Nothing else. There was just the one course, and
Pioneer Mons, everything.
There was only the one course.
Yeah. Gosh, wow.
And my experience, and one course from folders from like, it was like, but I put it all together, adding what I had learned through the years, and mental health was one of them, for example, that I started to think mental health was not in the course that I learned.
So there was no mention. It was all physical.
No mental health. Of course, you mentioned the Manamaya kosha, and there was some aspects of Ayurveda. You learned the course of, for example, there was like the subject of the main cause of disease is in the mind, in the Manamaya kosha. But then in my experience, I said to see, well, wait a minute, there's also accidents. You cannot tell me I see it from an Ayurvedic perspective. The origin of disease is the Manamaya kosha. But actually, when you work with real people, you start to see, I don't know, a flower pot fell in my head, or whatever. And then you go, or for example, what happens when things happen to little children, or, and then you go, Manamaya kosha, I'm not sure. So I started to add a little bit my own kind of like interpretation based on real life experience. And I thought, yes, we need to have a course. I didn't know it was trauma at the time, but I thought I wanted to have an aspect that it was about the mind.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, I wrote the program, I prepared it. Oh my God, it took so much work, Yasmin. I mean, really, it was like from scratch. And then I thought, I have to be very honest with you. I can't remember how this was promoted, because I didn't have Instagram.
No.
I didn't have, and now to this day I go, how did we do? We got 5 students.
Wow.
One was a client of mine, I remember.
And then was one of the the lady
No, no,
shadowing you? No? Ah,
no, she wasn't. She wasn't. She just went off to do her thing because actually she liked massage. She inspired me. She came like a fairy godmother and told me, you need to do this. Boom,
planted the seed.
yes. Yeah, and we had 5 students. And at the time, well, my life was crazy. I was with a new partner, and we were living in a house with 3 kids and 2 dogs, and doing all of this as
Wow.
well.
Full on.
So, yeah, life was really quite active, exciting, but active. And so, anyway, we ended up with 5 students, and oh yeah, one of them was the girlfriend of the music teacher. It was like blah blah blah. And I found this place in the Vondel Park in Amsterdam called the Rose Center. And it was a really cold room with a blackboard. With a blackboard.
Blackboard, yeah.
I was so excited. Like I was one of those students who wanted to, when I was in the class, I was very naughty. But if I could avoid school, I did. And but I always wanted to be in the blackboard. Like, and then like this.
Yeah.
I loved it. And I loved drawing as well. So I would always do drawings and da da da. And I was so excited. I had my own blackboard and I had those 5 students. And it was, I can't tell you, it was wonderful. It was in this park and the room was awfully cold and we had to always wear blankets, but the learning had begun. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And then I started to hear about the IAYT, the International Association of Yoga Therapists, and I thought, okay, I want to get my program accredited.
Yeah.
But it involved some kind of investment, and I didn't have it. I remember it was 4,000 euros, and I spoke to a client of mine, and I was just mentioning it to him and saying, yeah, I want to do that. And he said, how much do you need? And I went, oh, don't be silly. How much do you need? And I said, well, 4,000 euros if you want to, because I needed to fly to the US to the conference, present ourselves and to the IAYT conference. At the time, that's how it worked. And so he turned up the day after with.
Oh,
I had helped him.
You.
I had helped him and his wife, their health, particularly with him. His health was a bit poorly. And again, a man from India. Even though kind of like I dodge India, then somehow India comes to me. And then I ended up going to Washington, D.C., to Virginia, actually, and that it was the IAYT conference. And I was so happy to meet these incredible humans. I was a little bit about going to the US because Trump was already in power. We don't talk politics, but it was a little bit like, I was like, what is the US going to be like? I worked in the US for many years before. But they are really, I can't say more about them. They were welcoming. And at the time, Amy Wheeler, I think she was, in the board. And it was unbelievable. And I learned so much. And I learned that a lot of them are volunteers. And that they're really helping a lot of people. They've started to work in hospitals. And I thought, yes, I want to accredit my program in this. So I applied for this. We became the accreditation. I can't even tell you how hard it was. It was you have to fill out like 200 documents, describing. At the time, you had to describe every 15 minutes of your program.
Oh my.
800 hours.
800 hour.
100 hours at the time. Every 15 minutes had to be described. Yes, in this board that was like insane. And my dear friend Sam, who is a film producer, just to give you an idea, she's a film producer, and she was doing yoga as well. She volunteered to help me. Now, to be a film producer, you have to be extremely organized. They're the best people to get things done, huh? She came in and she said, I'm going to do it. The two of us sweating, like, in the summer. I'll never forget it, getting all this stuff done. And it was so inspirational. And that's when the idea of the trauma came. And then I had already met Esther van der Sander, who runs a trauma program. Yeah. And it was so much creativity, so much. And as long as I was concerned, Nobody else in the world was doing this. It was us. I never look at other programs. That is true. Maybe I should, but I never look at what
others. You do your own.
I do research, of course, and look at what science is saying. That's really important for me.
Yeah.
But I think that, and as a matter of fact, a lot of times I find programs that they look similar to ours, and I go, it's because the energy is out there. You know, it's like we're all doing very similar work. If I'm working with people, and this is what I'm learning, I know that you in Colorado are going to be working with people, and that's what you're going to be like. You know, you're learning the same. We're learning from practically the same human pot.
Yeah.
So we're all going to be finding the same. So I don't waste my time going into some. In fact, people say to me, "Do you know so?" I said, "I know nothing. I know nothing about yoga people. Nothing. I know about human beings, the human beings that I work with, and of course our students now from all over the world. So yeah, it was Yasmin. I have to say, I left my skin there literally. But it's so exciting, so exciting.
But you've also set up a 200-hour training as well.
Yeah, yeah. That's something that we've been wanting to do for a long time.
Yeah.
Why? Because we felt that the 200-hour yoga teacher trainings out there, they were lacking substance. They were lacking. You see, we had an advantage, which is we were already looking at it from the yoga therapy perspective.
Yeah.
And when you look at it from the yoga therapy view, you go, the yoga teacher trainings, right? They're way behind. They're like, you know, that this is outmoded.
Yeah.
We need to have modern thinking in yoga teacher trainings that really look at humans in a different perspective rather than just the asana. And we always had that in mind, and we never did it. And then we had this wonderful student, Manuk Tiedemann, who joined our courses. And she qualified with us. And she also has a lot of other trainings. And bright young girl. And Caroline, one of our teachers, said, we need to keep an eye on Manuk. She's good. She's good. Manuk for us. Manuk for us. Like, for us.
Don't lose her.
Exactly. I was like, And then, like everything that has happened to me in my life, I remember I was exhausted from working. And one day I go to bed, and I thought, please, if there's some kind of, I don't know, universe there, can you please bring me a teacher? I need another teacher that teaches anatomy and physiology in my place because I'm so tired. I'm working so many hours. I wake up in the morning, I get a message from Manuk saying, "Hi, Mons. I was thinking, is there anything that I can do for you?" She knows that I got her and said, "I can't believe it, Manuk. I just woke up last night. I asked the universe to send me somebody. And you're there going, can I do something for you?" I thought, she loves anatomy and physiology. She started to teach it. And then one day she came to us and said, how about if I lead the yoga therapy training, the yoga teacher training for you, 200 hours. We said, okay, but it's your thing. Because, you know, yeah, we wanted our name, sources, resources, everything that you need, but you have to take care of it because
You've got so much else to do.
And she said, okay, I'll do it. And phenomenally successful, and he's doing so well. And yeah, and yeah, she's something else. Manuk is, I don't know, can't explain. Like another great creature working.
Yeah, I looked at some of the videos on YouTube and I was like, oh, I'd really love to be able to go to that course because it looked amazing.
You want to do it again, right? You want to do, like, you want to be a yoga teacher again. You want to do that training again.
Right.
Phenomenal, fantastic. So yeah, so that was so we're going from there, and we have big plans as well. A lot going on, Yasmin, and I know that you're going to do some teaching with us, which we're so happy. And yeah, there's a lot of plans. We have a new learning platform online, which maybe in another occasion, actually, I would like to maybe discuss about what it's like to teach online. And
such a hot topic.
Very hot topic. Why? Because I was just listening to this podcast with Dr. Chatterjee, and they were talking about how the experience of education in online teaching or educational experience is so poor. And I go, that's because you haven't been to our classes. They say, oh, there's no sense of community. I go, that's because you haven't been to our classes. So I almost want to send him an invitation to say, Dr. Chatterjee, just come over, come to our classes, and then you will see the experience of teaching
Yeah.
in an exciting community-based manner with everybody participating. Everybody knows each other. And I think that that's something definitely where I feel that we are pioneers in that.
And I think it's really interesting because I do some teaching for a medical school. And at the moment I'm just writing a lecture for them for May, but they've given me the online course they got given during COVID. And it is so dry and there is no community, there's nothing. And I'm like, ah, that's how you don't do online teaching.
That is how you don't do it.
The opposite from what's been created at the Yoga Therapy Institute.
Yeah, completely, completely. Like, it's so important. I mean, I have this idea in the background, which is like even having music, but I still haven't worked that one out. Imagine that you come in and you have this music, and then we're in there, and right
Yeah,
now,
like it'd be like in a beautiful
yeah,
spa, like a beautiful atmospheric.
yeah, exactly. And I'm a great music lover, so I really would like to do that. But anyway, we're working on that. But it doesn't have to be dry. It doesn't have to be boring. I have a friend who recently bought a course. I love him, Dr. Stephen Porges. He's great. But there were a few scientists in this online course. He said to me, it was so boring. And he's a scientist, so he said, I'm used to the scientific community.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can make science fun and exciting, and
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. And you can create this community, this sense of community. So yeah, for sure. Yasmin, it can be done, and there's a lot more to do. There's a lot more to do. So but yeah, and really that's it from me. There's a lot more things coming up and more things that were involved in it. Many people to thank, many people to say, oh my God, without them we couldn't have done it. All the teachers, Marlene Jansen was in it from the beginning, Suze Ritra was in it from the beginning, Koen van der Kroon and Lise van Dam from the start. Yeah, so so yes, from the moment we founded it. But yeah, I definitely labor of love and a dream, and just like going, okay, this is having these visions and then just going.
So, okay. So to round up then, I have two questions for you.
I am.
The first one would be, since that first day of walking into that yoga therapy training course, knowing that this is your future, what is the biggest change you have seen from then to now in the world of yoga therapy?
Okay, so the biggest change that I've seen, definitely the introduction of the mental health, for sure. The introduction of the term trauma, and the realization that for the better or for worse, and maybe it's possible we're taking it too much to the extreme. I have no idea. We will find out after my lifetime. That it's so vital and important that we take into consideration the mind when it comes to physical or physiological disease, and what's going on with the thoughts and emotions and the history of our trauma. And some people are even talking about the trauma that is being transmitted from generational to generation, and the effect that has in our health. That is probably the most transformative change that has happened since the time that I turned up in that class. Because at the time, the mind was only just, okay, we do meditation. That was the only thing that was connected with the mind. You just do meditation and that's it. And the change has also happened in meditation. A lot of people, that hardcore meditation of, meditate for how many hours, whatever. Now we're starting to see that could be too much. We've made it more accessible. And speaking of accessibility, the other aspect that has really changed since then has been the idea of accessibility.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, definitely mental health, and trauma and accessibility, meaning that not only the abled bodies can do this, right? Not only the flexible, the ones that can do, but we've had the incredible, it's so fascinating, Yasmin. I get the goosebumps because the first chair yoga that I ever did in my life was in my training over 20 years ago. It was not called chair yoga. We just sat in a chair. And we did it because we were learning how to work with individuals with rheumatoid arthritis, with Parkinson's, people with balance issues. There was no chair yoga at the time. Yes. We just sat on a chair. And so, to see all of that, the wonderful accessible yoga now, again, nowadays it exists as its own brand, and the fact that anybody and everybody, that's been the biggest transformation. Yes, yeah. Definitely the biggest transformation. And yoga being seen as a possible tool for improvement in our health. And that's why yoga therapy is thriving now. So yeah, those are the main changes. Yeah. I feel like a dinosaur when you're asking me this question. I feel like, oh, I'm going to ask one of our elders here. So tell us.
One of our pioneers.
What used to happen when people didn't have mobile phones?
Well, I remember not having a mobile phone.
Oh,
Yeah. Um, okay, so then my final question. So if someone's watching this who is interested in yoga therapy but isn't sure, it sounds like there's a lot of work. A lot of work, but also perhaps they will have to put a lot of work in physically, emotionally, mentally. What would your advice be if someone's not sure but is interested and they'd like to try, check it out?
yes, check it out. It's quite interesting because I think my point of view has changed on that one. I used to be the type that would say, you got to be 100% sure, you go for it, you do it, you see it, you visualize it. This is your life purpose. So that used to be my opinion. Yeah. Self-centered, saying, okay, this is what happened to me. However, as always, I am at awe with what happens outside of me. And that is, I think that's the beauty in life, what's happening outside of you. And I see people who join like, yeah, I'm not sure if this is, and then they come to one session and then they join another one and then another module and then another module. They end up graduating and they end up working as yoga therapists. And they started just there by chance going, So my advice would be, give it a go. It doesn't have to be, and now we say to our students, you don't have to commit to the full diploma. Becoming a yoga therapist or seeing that, it can be quite daunting.
Yeah.
You know it. I mean, you're in the medical system, right? You became a doctor. And I don't know, but those of us who are not in the medical profession, but we always think that doctors are almost like born. You're like 10 years old and you go, what would you like to be? I want to be a doctor. And then they end up being a doctor. And there was always one in the classroom who wanted to be a doctor and they ended up being a doctor. Or maybe the father or the mother was a doctor, kind of like a little bit like that. So it doesn't have to be that way. It can be very daunting to look at a course that is going to take a minimum of 2 years, probably 3 years of your life. The financial investment, physical investment, mental investment. Most people, when they take on yoga therapy, they already have an adult life. So what does that mean? They've got a job, they've got kids, they've got whatever responsibilities. It can even put pressure on your partner, on your relationship. It's like, yeah. So not to look at it, oh my God, I got to do this, which is okay also to do. But start with something that you can already use for so say, for example, you do a yoga therapy foundation, or if you're interested in yoga therapy for the mind, whatever. Start there and see what it does to you.
Yeah.
It's not a waste of time because in any case, whatever you learn is going to be useful for you and for your work and your career and yourself. Start somewhere and then see what it does to you. How does it land on you? Is it something that you go, no way, I couldn't do this? Or something you go, like we recently had somebody who goes, you know what, I was here by chance and I think I'm going to book another one. I'm loving this. So, because you never know, it doesn't have to be like fireworks and, it's a little bit like people say about falling in love. Not all the best relationships are the ones where get all the oh my God, I fell in love immediately. I knew it was him or her or they or blah, 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 blah. That doesn't give you a guarantee that that will be a successful relationship. But this is a little bit the same. You don't have to go, whoa, like this, but just start. And there's many different ways that you can work as a yoga therapist. So when you do a training like this, you don't have to be a yoga therapist working in a yoga therapy setting. You could adapt it to your clinical experience as a doctor, as a physio, as a psychologist. You could introduce it in your group yoga classes. You maybe will benefit from it for your own life and your own health. We have a lot of students who say, this has transformed my life for my own health and my well-being. So that would be my advice. Don't expect like, whoa, but just start somewhere and then see where it goes. Yes. Go out on that date. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful advice. Thank you.
Yes. So, Yasmin, well, I can see I shared a lot of information about me. Nobody asked me. You're the first person who ever asked me. So how did you start? What happened? How, a lot of people don't really know. And it's funny because a lot of people think, oh, she must come from a privileged background. Absolutely no way. I mean, we didn't have enough money to eat the day after when I grew up.
I remember the story. So through my training, I remember the story about the girl in the back during one of your classes, and you've dropped a few little tidbits in, but I think it's fascinating. It's like you said about when you're working with people, that human, those stories, it's so inspiring. And as you said, you came from, a background with very little.
Yes, and that also has added a lot to the learning, Yasmin. Because when you come from a poor background and a very underprivileged background, you have to learn about people.
Yeah. In order to get by that emotional intelligence.
Completely. It's part of the tool of surviving. And don't forget that I moved to a country where I didn't speak the language. So again, body language was essential. Yeah, for learning, is this person happy, not happy? What's going on? But okay, so that is also part of it. I think that actually, rather than seeing it as a burden, it was definitely a benefit for me. The fact that it was just a question of survival. So you had to, then you learned, from human beings because you had to survive. So yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Montserrat. That has been such a beautiful discussion. So inspiring to hear your journey, hearing so much that I don't think you've ever spoken to about with other people. And so, yeah, really grateful. And if anyone would like more information, we'll leave some links at the bottom of in the little description box.
Yes, and I think it's important to say also, Yasmin, that of course we will leave some information about the Yoga Therapy Institute, but also the IAYT, because I think that it's very important to look at different schools, different ways. Everybody learns in a different way and different forms, and of course, and there are some courses that are in person as well. We don't do it in person, but definitely. So yeah, to offer as much as possible about yoga therapy and information for everybody. And thank you, Yasmin. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for getting me to talk so much.
You weren't going to get out of it.
Yeah. Oh my God. So what are you going to do for the next episode? What is because we talked about how I find your life fascinating, to say, okay, so you're a medical doctor based in the UK, and I know you have your background, but why yoga and why yoga therapy? And now you're really combining and wanting to bring yoga therapy into your work. You work in geriatrics and, older care. And I think we all need to hear about that. I think people will really want to hear about that. It's very inspiration.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to share that, and hopefully people will learn some stuff from that as well. So
I very much think so. And more we're getting medical professionals training in yoga therapy. So
which is super exciting and just shows that there is a desire for change.
absolutely. Yeah, for change, progression. It's called the
Mm.
progressive yoga therapy dialogue. Yeah? So
Yeah.
yes, progression. Thank you, Yasmin. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.